Good morning, everybody. I think we can probably get going for this plenary session on the way forward. First of all, I think I should introduce myself. I'm a new face here. I think you're probably more used to seeing each other. But my name is Matthew Keys, European Commission. I'm from the Rural Development, Food Security and Nutrition Unit. And I'm here for this event with my colleague David Radcliffe, whom many of you probably already know. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to attend the Science Forum. It's the first time I've attended this, and I've been very impressed with the quality of presentations and the discussions that have taken place. It's been quite an interesting couple of days. I'm particularly pleased to be here representing, as I do, one of the leading donors to CGIAR, and to be present and to play an active part in today's proceedings, and to hear, after all the fantastic presentations and discussions that we have had, how we think that we might like to actually move forward. Perhaps a few words on how we in the EU see how we think that we'd like to move forward. This year's theme for the Science Forum is in fact very timely, and it's very important for the EU. Nutrition and health outcomes, targets for agricultural research. Over the last 2 to 3 years, nutrition has taken on huge importance in the EU, and we need to seize the international momentum, which, in my opinion, is not going to be there forever. We have the momentum at the moment, and it's very important that we use that momentum and see what we can do to affect nutrition outcomes. The EU is already seizing the momentum to a certain extent. 3.5 billion euros from our next financial period, this is a period which runs from 2014 to 2020, is going to be used to address nutrition. This is by ensuring that actions in a range of sectors, and we're very keen on this notion of working across sectors, working in a multi-sectoral way through agriculture, through health, water, food security, education, all the sectors that we think are relevant, so that these are actually going to have a greater impact on nutrition. 3.5 billion sounds like a huge amount of money. This is money that we would spend anyway. The idea is that we want to nutritionize the money that we spend. It's not an English word, it doesn't exist even in Eurospeak, but that's what we want to try and do with the money. And it's in the nutrition sensitive area that we see that we're going to have this impact on nutrition. Over the next year or two, what we're going to be doing is designing programs that we will implement in country with our partners to make the programs that we actually have somewhat more nutrition sensitive. And our goal is to ensure that we're going to contribute significantly to the World Health Assembly goal. We've chosen particularly the stunting goal. We're not of course unaware that there are other World Health Assembly goals, but the goal that we've chosen to focus on is to reduce stunting by 70 million by 2025. And the European Commission has decided that it will take 10% of that goal. So by 2025, our goal is that we will have reduced stunting by 7 million children. Achieving our target is going to mean that we need to work closely with everybody. We've a range of partners. We work very closely already with the UN. We work extremely closely with the Sun Movement, with international organizations, NGOs, the private sector. And the key partner is obviously going to be partner countries. And what partner countries are doing, how they're committed to the Sun Movement is going to really decide and drive forward how we actually have an impact on nutrition. We're also going to work hard at political level to make sure that nutrition is going to be well reflected in the post-2015 goals. As we all know, nutrition didn't really feature in the last nutrition goals, and we've seen in one of the presentations this morning the way the MDGs are in fact very much siloed. So our goal is to make sure that nutrition features much more prominently next time round. From our own side, the EU has adopted a nutrition policy. In EU speak, that's a communication. And this sets out what we want to do. But we're now preparing an action plan which will show us how we actually want to get there. This is going to be more complicated, But improved knowledge, improved research is going to be key. And I'm very hopeful that many of the ideas that we've been discussing over the last few days, one way or another, that they're going to find their way into our efforts to achieve improved nutrition. It's an ambitious goal, but it's one that I think that over the next, particularly over the next programming period, over the next budget period between 2014 2020, that we hope to really have a major impact. Today, my role is very much more modest. It's my pleasure to introduce the speakers today's panel. And it's not only my pleasure, but it's my duty to remind them that they should be very brief. I believe they've got 8 minutes to speak, and I'll try and remind them after 7 minutes that they're coming to the end of their time. The order of the panel's discussion today is a little bit different to what you have in your program. We're going to start with Stefan Schmitz, who's joined us from the BMZ. We will then come to Frank Rijsberman from CGIAR. We'll continue with John McDermott, who will give us a perspective of what he feels the way forward is based on the discussions that we've been hearing over the last couple of days. And then we'll hear a perspective from Linju Zhang, who will also have a few words to say. We'll finalize with some closing remarks from Ken Kassman. But first of all, I'd like to hand over to Stefan Schmidt, who will give us his perspective from BMZ.
I think the renewed international attention being given to rural development, to agriculture, to food security was definitely overdue. And alongside this, there is a renewed interest in nutrition, nutritious food. It's not only the quantity of food that matters, it's also the quality of food that matters. And well, alongside many others like you, German Development Corporation is convinced that investment in the agricultural sector and in nutrition and health is good investment, that such investment reduces poverty to a much greater extent than investment in other economic areas does. This is our key development policy motivation for agricultural sector development and for our new focus on nutrition. After many years of neglect, German Development Corporation is now truly committed to rural development and agriculture and food security again. Between 2010 and 2012, we invested significantly more than 2 billion euros in rural development, agriculture, and food security. And we will continue our investment this year with more than 700 million euros. This is over 10% of the BMZ budget. To make it even more specific and to make sure that we have a stronger focus, not just on access to food and availability of food, but also to the nutritionist aspect. Our minister at the G8-related Nutrition for Growth Summit in June this year announced that BMZ will invest another 200 million euros up to 2020 for programs that provide healthy and nutritious food, especially for children and mothers. At the end of last year, we, the BMZ, established a new development policy strategy for the agricultural sector. In this strategy, we identified 6 areas of action that will guide our future work. 6 areas of action. One of these 6 areas of action is on transfer of knowledge and on agricultural training. We see really the big need to focus on this important point. Now you may ask what the other 5 areas of action. Yeah, just that the other 5 areas of action are first, agricultural policy advice and institution building. Second, professionalizing smallholder farming. Third, agricultural financing. Fourth, resource management, environmental protection, and irrigation farming. And fifth, cooperation with local and international enterprises. And you see all these areas of action are interlinked, and they are all more or less related to our aspect of nutrition here. The world is changing rapidly in many aspects. Let me just highlight one aspect here, which I think is very important if we have a broader perspective and look into the future and ask ourselves, what are the real challenges we are facing? We know that global population living in rural areas will continue to grow for at least the next decade. Not until then, rural population will slowly decrease. On the other hand, cities grow rapidly all over the world. In 2050, 70% of global population of almost then 10 billion people will live in cities. Many developing countries are facing a growing urban middle class, for example, with a growing appetite for high-value, protein-rich food. All these countries have the choice. They will have to decide global sourcing or local or regional sourcing. This is the real, for me, a key question, a challenge, but also a big opportunity, you could say. Opportunity for the agricultural sector in these countries to meet the demand of a growing urban middle class and to provide not just calories, but to provide protein-rich, quality-rich food. There is a chance for many smallholders to grow out of subsistence farming and become a producer for growing urban markets. To become the main actor in a value chain, from a seed grain to high-value, nutritious rich food for sale on an urban market, smallholders need secured access to land and water, they need access to finance, and they need access to knowledge and innovation. So we are sitting here right at this challenge to bring knowledge that we have down to the field, down to the market, down to the farmers and the consumers as well. I could come back later if we have time. There are two aspects I see that are key. First of all, we have a nexus challenge here. We have agricultural research on the one hand, and we have other areas of research. For example, in health and education. We have to bring these various strands of research closer together. The second point is networks and partnerships. Yes, you discussed it here. This networking has very, very different aspects. It's on bringing international research and national research activities together. Linking research to advisory services, for example. Linking research better to policy making and bringing public research closer to what the private sector is doing. Among others, I think these are key challenges and key opportunities really to strengthen the nutritious and nutrition agenda. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Stefan. And I think from the EU perspective, we'd be very interested to have a closer look at those 6 areas of action, because as we engage in the work that we're now doing over the next couple of months to define our own action plan, I think that it would be very important to work with our partners, particularly in the EU, to make sure that we're all going in a similar direction. So thank you very much for those insights. Now I'd like to give the floor to Frank Rijsberman from CGIAR, who will give us the CGIAR perspective.
Thank you. And indeed, some of my colleagues before the session said, great, So you're going to tell us how to make sense of this all. Now, actually, that will be John. So let me just make some random comments, and then John will tell you how to make sense of that all. I thought it was actually quite relevant to remind ourselves, as Rajul did very well in the first session, how far we have come in a very short time. And speaking to Joachim von Braun in the reception last night, he just referred to that it was just 2006, 2007 when the first few agricultural researchers met with a number of medical doctors to talk about this agriculture and health, agriculture and nutrition nexus. So to have this room full of people and to have all these conversations, even that sometimes maybe somewhat disjointed, not always as integrated as we would like to see them, is already a tremendous step up. And indeed, in the CGIAR, we have also, I think, come quite far. It's always glasses half full, glasses half empty, of course. But yes, while we have always been very focused on hunger and poverty, we have indeed formally added nutrition and environmental sustainability in as our key goals. Those are the 4 system-level outcomes that we are striving to achieve. So I was very glad that Lawrence Haddad found that in our most recent annual report he saw on the website, 2011. Like Prabhu, little plug, we actually did this week put our 2012 annual report on the website too, in which he would find the same thing. But yes, we are focused on hunger, poverty, nutrition, and environmental sustainability. But we've also changed, I think, our perception of hunger. While it used to be defined as primarily or exclusively calorie intake, IFPRI's Global Hunger Index is now has 3 key elements. Undernourishment still, but also child underweight and child mortality. So we are, even when we are looking at hunger itself, we have a much more, I think, a richer understanding of a number of those issues associated with it. And of course we have a strong program, Agriculture for Nutrition and Health, cutting across of many things we do. John will speak about that. But that's not the only place where we address nutrition. We have other programs. Graham is here, who leads Roots, Tubers and Bananas, sits right there, which is where the orange-fleshed sweet potatoes have their home, for instance. So I think nutrition is beginning to be more embedded across our portfolio. So it was good to hear from a number of the speakers that while if you look at those meta-evaluations, you don't see much impact of agriculture on nutritional outcomes, our keynote speakers, pretty much all of them said, we know that we do have those impacts. Maybe they're in other domains, as Patrick Webb said, or maybe the RCTs that we rely on in health aren't the right tools, as Per Pinstrup-Andersen cautioned us. I do think we take on the burden that in agriculture we have to get better at coming up with the evidence. So I think building into our research the ways to understand the pathways and to invest in getting the monitoring right and getting the causality better understood, to have the evidence of impact, is definitely something that we have to take on. So we don't have that same conclusion if we sit here 5 or 10 years from now. So that is already one takeaway. Other takeaways are that, well, we do actually have an excellent opportunity in the CGIAR. We have formed research programs a few years ago, and we're in the middle of thinking about our guidance for the next round, the next generation, the second phase of those CRPs. So in that formulation of our guidance, I think we have an opportunity, as we are all very busy identifying what the development outcomes are that we should be pursuing, there's an opportunity to build in the conclusions that come from this conference. And I think as we then go into that whole proposal writing phase from the middle of 2014 to 15, to sort of set the agenda for our system from 2016 to 2018, that's an excellent opportunity to do what you're advising here. So one of those things I heard very clearly was that we need to start at the plate. And that Lindsay Allen said that as we scale out and up technologies, that we can actually look at what people consume, that it's not so difficult, that it's not unaffordable, and that we should make that more part and parcel of our own project designs, of our own research design. And of course, more generally, I think we have a strong message that we should focus on demand more, because I guess we are in the end still in many ways focused on the supply side, on developing technologies and then rolling those out. And if people don't adopt them, then we say, what incentives can we come up with to get people to adopt these technologies that we've just invented that are so good for them? And yes, I mean, the fact that we should start at the demand side, that we, as the breakout session on value chains recommended yesterday, that from the value chains we should also take back what the research agenda for the commodity programs should be, so that we indeed produce things people want, is, I think, a very important takeaway. We've also heard here, I think, and that will lead to some discussion, that we are still over-focused on staple grains, or Green Revolution staple grains, and whether that then means that we should start a program to breed vegetables. I think Ken Kasman will say something about that, but that is indeed an interesting question. We may not start a program to breed vegetables. We may not even have to make AVRDC a member of the CGIAR. Having shifted away from a focus on institutions to a focus on programs means that AVRDC, the Vegetable Center, is indeed a partner in a number of our programs, and if we decide there needs to be a heavier emphasis on nutrition-dense foods, on fruits and vegetables, on animal-sourced foods, we should be able to do that by strengthening our programs and indeed creating the appropriate partnerships to implement those. So I think we can do that. And indeed what the appropriate balance in our priority setting is for coarse grains, for legumes, for fruits and vegetables, for animal-sourced foods, that is a critical question that goes into our design for that next round of our CRPs. Not an easy question, so I think we'll look forward to getting more advice or having more discussion about that as well. I have to, full disclosure, admit that I'm a water person, and my previous task actually was to be the director of water and sanitation at the Gates Foundation, where we had decided we needed to focus very heavily on sanitation. In fact, I proudly headed the toilet team at the Gates Foundation. And I think that is a relevant message here as well, because we are talking about nutrition and we bring together the ag and nutrition communities, and to some extent I think the sanitation community is somewhat the missing third leg of that stool. In water and sanitation in the CG, we still very much focus on water as an input to agriculture on the supply side of irrigation. There was also a program, Eline Boulet was here, she just left. She worked at IMI on the impact of using untreated wastewater for vegetable production in peri-urban agriculture, and the percentage of vegetables in Pakistan, for instance, grown that way is incredibly high, like 25% grown with untreated wastewater and almost everything else with diluted wastewater. So indeed, I think we have a few more silos to break through, whether it is with sanitation or whether it is with our natural resources management colleagues. Although, of course, you're making good progress here. In my final seconds, let me address the discussions we've had on gender quite a bit here. So I think I feel I was spoken to as one of those older, as we say in the CG, male, stale, and pale white guys who should feel addressed when we need to be able to change and take on this commitment to gender research. And we are, in fact. Mainstreaming gender research in all of our portfolio is a very serious responsibility. We've come up with a strategy to do that across the portfolio. We've told all of the CRPs that they have to come up with strategies to do that. And we will monitor that that is indeed happening. In fact, we had an assessment this year on the status of our mainstreaming. And we concluded that 5 of our 15 programs are in fact doing very well. And the other 10 are in fact struggling. They don't have the capacity. They need to invest in getting more researchers in that field and indeed finding out what it is they need to do. So I won't have time to say much more about it other than to say that message is very well received and we do indeed want to take that very seriously. So I would like to just end on that final conclusion that there is indeed dramatic potential in agriculture to accelerate stunting decline, although sadly, of course, it is still unfulfilled potential, as people said, so we have our work cut out. And John will tell you what we're going to do about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank. What I would take very much from that is the message clearly that we have the momentum with us for nutrition at the moment, and we really need to do something about it. I would also pick up on the point that the example that you raised, which was also raised this morning about food safety, or yesterday, food safety. And it's something maybe that we in the EU have not particularly addressed in our communication, but I think it's a message I will certainly bring back, that the impact that poor food safety, for example, using water, that is going to actually diminish the effects on nutrition. So I think that's an important message that I will certainly take back. But now I would like to hand the floor over to John McDermott from the CGIAR, who will tell you what he thought of the last few days and who will point to the way forward. John, please.
This thing's tired by all the use. While it's warming up, yeah. First of all, this has been obviously. I feel I'm one of the chief beneficiaries of this conference, and I appreciate that during the planning of it, Maggie and Peter and Preet involved me quite closely, and so I got to kind of help shape the kind of advice I was going to get. So it's been very useful that way. So let me just kind of move on. And what I'm going to do is kind of it's selected reflections, everybody. I mean, it's a short period of time, but the selection is really around what I'm taking away in terms of strategy and implementation for research and for partnership from this meeting. I mean, a lot of good things have been said, and I'm really thankful to many of you who have sent them. And I think the other good thing that's come out is we can see that there is really a big community consolidating around this, and the CGIAR is part of that community. And so I think, we're all learning how to do this. So I think there's an important, this has been very helpful in terms of helping people network and do things like that. Let me start with, I think we had a good discussion yesterday about supply and demand. Let me start with the supply side. Because, I mean, in a sense, what we're trying to do is leverage and get better at what we're doing now to make sure that it has more impacts on nutrition. And those are really coming from four main areas. We've heard about the problem of kind of the nutritious foods, the milk, the meat, the legumes, etc. How do we work on the efficiency and effectiveness of how they get delivered to people? We've had pretty good experience on biofortification, actually, and how people come together to do that and go to scale. Then there's a whole section on kind of ag policy and what it's doing. We heard there was some good discussions around income and food prices. Those are all important things. How do we add nutrition and health into the kind of systems work that we do? We have livelihood. A lot of the systems programs, they focus on livelihood, natural resources, sustainability, etc. Nutrition and health is just one part of all of that. How do we bring that? That's another thing to leverage. And then the risk side of agriculture, especially as it's intensifying, I got the kind of analysis of, the systems we have in place for food safety. It's like this rickety old car that's constantly falling apart. It's not very viable at the moment. Now, one of the key challenges is to really set the expectations for what we're doing in agriculture and food. And I think so much good has been said about the fact about diet quality. Let's really focus on what we're doing about diets. Now, for the CGIAR, that's not a trivial issue because we're largely set up on commodities. So we have all these different commodities and trying to round up all these people and say, how do you come together on diets? We don't want everybody eating 100% orange flesh sweet potatoes and nothing else, or 100% meat or whatever. So what makes sense? And across different sections of the life cycle. So there's, I think, getting that message clear and working on the indicators. We heard a lot of good things on that we can move forward with. We've got this new CGIAR system level outcome. I'm not sure that everybody in the CGIAR understands the implications of taking that on yet. This is one good start. I hope you heard the message that there's important research gaps that people care about, including people here. And that another message is that I think we can stop doing the reviews now. You got this from Lawrence and other people. Let's get on with, there's some key new research we need to do. I recognize I'm a researcher. Now, the other part of this puzzle, and it's kind of the demand side, is linking agriculture with the nutrition and health community. We're not trying to replace nutrition and health. We're trying to make sure that agriculture is working together with nutrition and health. And understanding nutrition and health demands on consumption behaviors and how agriculture might contribute. And that's choosing our key areas. And this came up nicely, I think, yesterday morning with Lin Shu. Now, I'm actually an epidemiologist. I come from the public health world. And sometimes I'm appalled by what I hear in terms of what people think evidence is, what's convincing, because that's the culture I come from. And you have to remember that public health nutrition comes from this strong evidence culture for a reason. It has a history of people selling wrong things, of doing wrong things, the history of health not wanting to do harm. There's real reasons why they're like this, okay? Why they like randomized controls, why we don't believe anyone when they proclaim something. There's real reasons for this. And if we're going to work together, we have to understand these two cultures. Now, I think we can shift these cultures, and there are other types of studies, and we're seeing a few innovative kind of approaches to doing this, which are not full randomized trials now, and we can do this. But we have to recognize these differences, and I think we also have to look in the mirror and recognize as agriculture our past failures to do these studies properly. It's not just that we tried to do the wrong things. We have to set the expectations right, that we can't cover everything. It's going to be diet. But I think the other thing is lousy sample sizes, bad designs. Those are things we have to pay attention to, and we can learn a lot from the public health people about how to do this. And then the other thing, and I think it's very kind of strategic for the CGIAR, is we actually have some excellent capacity in nutrition evaluation. And I want to keep that capacity general enough to evaluate nutrition from a range of nutrition-sensitive and nutrition-specific interventions, whether it's social protection, whether it's gender, whether it's agriculture, whatever it is. Because in the development sphere, we're going to be balancing those and trying to mix them to help very vulnerable groups. And we want to keep that general capacity and then understand where agriculture fits in that mix. Now, linking research to development, obviously a lot of researchers here. Good points made about cost effectiveness and returns to investment. And this really matters. We're talking about scarce resources. We have to use them well, and we have to use them for the targets. Now, there was, especially this morning, some better discussion about targeting, and targeting is crucial. I think in the kind of public good sphere, if we've learned anything over the last 30 years, we've learned how important targeting is to really get things to our right groups. And we have to pay attention to that. I think Prabhu made a good point today about let's figure out what the markets can do or the economic growth can do, and then figure out what isn't done that we can really focus our public goods and some of our targeting on for vulnerable people. The thing I didn't hear about, and perhaps that's because I'm more of a cynic and you're all optimists, is about trade-offs, okay? There's nothing in this world, or very few things, that are win-win. We always like to talk about them, but I think they're probably the minority of things. And there's going to be trade-offs and decisions that have to be made. If we have economic growth of a certain type in agriculture, it might leave people behind. Let's figure out what's going on and do that. The other thing I didn't hear about is I think there's a lot of danger, maybe I worry a lot, that we're doing some harm in some of the things we're doing. We're doing some harm to women, we're doing some harm to other vulnerable groups, by the way, by the types of policies we have, even by the types of interventions we're doing. And I think an important part of these programs is to really figure out how we can avoid harm. And this is an important part of the kind of medical paradigm where I come from. On gender, we had some great discussions about gender. I think we're on the right track, but when I go around to the different sections and see how people are thinking about research, how gender and the relative roles of men and women, all these kinds of things, it's not really integrated yet. And for nutrition and health outcomes, it has to be right there. It has to be totally integrated. And then in terms of cross-sectional actions, we heard some interesting things about co-location. I think there's a lot we have to understand about the synergies and transaction costs. This relationship with nutrition and health is going to be hard work, and we've got to figure out how to get the best outcomes from it. Let me finish off with partnerships. So within the CGIAR, I think one of the things you have to recognize is these different things for nutrition and health are in different programs. And so we have most of the nutrition and health people actually in the program that I lead on agriculture for nutrition and health. But most of the people who work on value chains for livestock and fish or for legumes, our colleagues in AVRDC who work on vegetables, I mean, we have to rely on them if we're going to find out how we have traction. Likewise for the systems, I don't see nutrition and health leading what we do in systems. I really see the systems leading it and us adding value to what they're doing. They have the trust relationship with the communities, not us. On research, we see that there's a wide network and we really need to engage, and this is good. Everybody's learning about this. How do we move forward? In terms of undernutrition, what it takes, I think we have to plug away at this. We have some discussions with a number of NGOs on how we might do this because they work on the different things. I don't think probably that we'll start trying to coordinate the government of India in doing this, but I think with the NGOs we might make faster success. And then the last 2 points, I think one of the issues that comes up is how far does the CGIAR get involved in food systems? Where we're starting is to look at who are the kind of entry points for agriculture that can connect us to the food system. So food processors, for example, Bühler, which is a company that deals with food processing, business schools, Gain, Bonnie's here. These are the kind of connectors to help us work with the food industry. And just from my point of view, the partnerships that we need are so important because those are the opportunities for innovation. I think working in these partnerships is going to be the big drivers for innovation, whether it's bringing together technical, social, and business innovation, whether it's bringing together cross-sectoral learning. But I think investing a lot in the partnerships is really going to drive the innovation. So those are kind of the messages I took away that we'll be trying to work on with the rest of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. I heard very much what you said on research gaps. It was difficult not to. You looked at me as you said it. So we work very closely with the CGIAR, and there are plenty of other donors who are also keen, I'm sure, to make sure that these gaps are no more. There's also, and probably this is not the thing to say to a science forum, there is the notion of plausible impact. It may be something that we need to look at for things that we do that are nutrition sensitive. It's not always easy to get hard evidence in the way you do perhaps for health programs as you do for things that are nutrition sensitive. And I think it's maybe something that maybe we need to look at in the future. It's something certainly that we in the EU are looking at in terms of the stunting target that we want to achieve. And measurement of the impact is I think something that we will struggle with and that we're working very hard on. Anyway, thank you very much, John. I would like now to pass the floor over to Linju Zhang, who is from the Chinese Academy of Science and who will give us her views on how she's seen the few days. Lin.
Thank you very much, says me. And thanks for giving me the last opportunity to talk, as I'm probably the non-CG, although I'm associated with CG at the board level. But it's, so first, I think I have 4 points to take away. My observations and comments. First, I think like everyone have already said, I really enjoyed this forum because I think this is really a focused forum with specific topics where you see the participants are coming from diverse backgrounds, which is good because we want to push for multidisciplinary, multi-stakeholders kind of forums. This is good. So what I found is that I learned more from this forum and by interacting with people than what I've contributed. So thank you for the opportunity. So that's the first point. The second point, what I want to say is, again, on impact evaluation. This has been taught, repeated many, many times. Regardless what method we're using, that's fine. I mean, we're open for all kinds of methods if we can measure the impact. But what I want to say is that impact evaluation actually is a process that should be leading to better and improved program design or project design. So it's not really the final stop of what we do with our projects. So what I want to use an example that when we do project evaluation, one of the interventions where the point I made about anemia, because China, children are anemic. So when we asked, when we did the supply side of intervention, it worked. But when we came to the government and says, hey, look, if you gave this and that, the kids would improve their health. But the government came back and said, hey, look, this nutritional problem shouldn't be the state alone who address it. So households should be addressing it too. So how are we coming back to say, okay, let's do parents training, because that way would help, if they have resources, they could better cook the meal and let the kids do. So when we did intensive parent training, we did the evaluation, it didn't work. But that's not the end of the word. So what we said, okay, we looked at international literature, what we found, actually short-term training doesn't lead to behavioral change. So what more? We said, okay, we intensify the training to school principals and to school, homeroom teacher and parents and students. Again, it didn't have impact. Why? Because a lot of parents still don't turn up and they're too busy doing other things. And it's really, and then a lot of the times the kids eat at home and they don't really, the teachers have no responsibility. And they said, okay, it's not really we don't want to train. So we surfed the literature again and found it out, okay, you need to have persistent message and sending to the parents. So we tried again, information training, but on top of that, we added text messaging using ICT technology. Said, okay, you train one or twice, but I got all the mobile numbers of the parents and teachers. Each week, we send a text message. We said, okay, if you feed your baby with this and that, you get better. And then every 4 weeks, and we send a quiz. That quiz was saying, do you know feed your baby with this and that is good for your kids? And if you answer yes or no, if you answer correctly, we top you with some money, to your mobile phone. After a year, that worked. So that's what I'm saying, that, impact evaluation is not the end of the word. It's leading for a better design, and you reach the end. After a year, we found that all those trainings plus text messaging had a huge impact on the household, how to prepare the food for the babies. So obviously, their hemoglobin level went up, and their school, performance went up also. That's what we want. That's the objective we want to do. So I just want to use this to say what the impact evaluation served the purpose in our podium. So that's the second point. It's a bit long, but there's a story. But the third point, I want to reiterate again what Joachim brought up. So I think it's been reiterated by several people. We really need to have, doing impact evaluation or doing work, we really need to be problem-oriented and demand-driven. I could see few, advantages of that. With this thing, we are not struggling to find the indicators because we knew what are pressing issues and we have easy indicators to look for. And we also, can really have a clear objective and protocols on how to specifically at program design level to address these issues directly with a clear, causal chain mapped out and build it up. On top of that, because we're talking about multidisciplinary research, here we have nutritionists, sociologists, anthropologists, economists. But if you are issue-based and demand-based, you know what kind of expertise you would need in the team to do it. So you are very clear about what kind of partners and multidisciplines you wanted to have in the team. So that's what I want to emphasize, because without this, you can hardly, if you are on supply side, you say, okay, I'm enjoying my research, but how I wanted to see the outcome, which exit I should go in. So that's too much of a struggle, so as you could see from all those few days. So my last point, actually, it was when John said it's exactly on partnerships. Because this is a CGIAR tradition where, we have to have strategic partnerships. But here I see a lot of partners and from different communities. But to me, some were doing very good, but some are not. I wanted to say, my understanding of partnership are the few types where the partnership we want, where we wanted to capacity build them, because that's the CGIAR, one of the mandates. And also the partnership we want, where who could complement on our strength, where we're lacking within the system and we want to seek for outsiders. So we're doing in some way good and bad. We probably have more developed countries' expertise complementary and less developing countries' strong expertise joining in. That's probably area or a place to move. The other is that the partners who knows the local specificities, where the communities in there, because if you want to implement there, you don't want a helicopter, dropping them there because they don't know local specificity, and what you designed in the office is beautiful, but it's not working, it's not feasible in the field. And there's last but not the least, the partners who can help us to scale up. I said it yesterday, which really active involvement of policymakers. In the end, whatever beautiful work we do, we need people to carry through and carry forward. And without involving policymakers, probably our project resources, although donors are very generous, it's going to dry. So we need governments to pick up. So having said this, it's not all the partners, we need donors, of course, private sectors, but one thing I would recommend as a last point is some partners we need to reach out for, rather than them coming to us. One of those is really the policymakers. Of course, you don't need me to say you reach out for donors because that's the fundamental, but I think there's other partners like policymakers we need to reach out for. So with that, I want to end up my comments, and thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lin Ju. I like particularly the point on impact evaluation. I think we all spend a lot of money on evaluating what we do, and then when we come to designing the new program, we somehow forget to look at what we have discovered in the past, and we don't apply the good lessons, we don't apply the bad lessons, and we end up just doing the same again because it's easier. So I think it's a lesson for us all. Now we have, I think, about 10 minutes for questions, and then we will close with Ken Kasman. So I would like to take 10 minutes first for questions. We had a specific request from somebody who wished to intervene as a result of the last panel, so we'll quickly have that intervention, and then we'll have about 10 minutes. And I would also like to remind everybody that you're very welcome to participate in the Early Career Scientists Exploring Opportunities session, which is going to take place here at 2 o'clock. So everybody is very welcome and encouraged to participate for that if you're not already heading off on a plane or a train. So perhaps the first question I'll take will be the person who has asked for the floor from the last session, and then we'll have 10 minutes question and answers for this session.
Robert Holmer, AVDC, Thailand. Actually, it connects also to this session, to Frank and John. There was this notion that maybe there is no need for public investment in vegetable breeding because the private sector can do that better. I beg to disagree. I agree that the private seed sector is absolutely necessary to bring improved seed material to farmers, but we know from experience that they cannot do that for vegetables without the involvement of public breeding. We know, for example, in India, that 70% of tomatoes sold by the Indian private seed companies use materials bred by AVDC breeders or from the Chimbank. The same is true for Thailand or for Africa. So I think there is really there is a need for investment in public vegetable breeding, also for things that are not important yet for the private seed sector, such as indigenous vegetables. On the second point, I was happy that Frank mentioned toilets. I was involved in a community garden project in the Philippines. Everything went well, but one comment of the gardeners was, Robert, we need toilets. And as an agronomist, I was never exposed to sanitation issues. And I learned a lot about open defecation worms and also their impact on malnutrition. And therefore, I also would agree that we have to go out of our silos. And toilets can be a way to bring people together. Because for agronomists, urine is a perfect fertilizer. You talk to engineers and you talk to people from the medical sector. So I appreciate that comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question. We have somebody in the red.
Thank you very much. My name is Lindley Chuona Carlton. I'm from the Swedish University of Agriculture Sciences in Sweden. I'm very grateful to the last speaker for your last point on partnerships, especially the point which you say, which is about sometimes we need to reach out. I think we can truly say, I'm not sure, I might be understating here, that there is a glaring lack of representation from the NAS system here. And the CGIAR is supposedly working quite significantly with the NAS system. And as the National Agricultural Research Systems. And I think it's also quite important, since we're talking about nutrition and health interventions, that we do have a fair representation from academic institutions, especially from those that are weaker institutions. We have quite a good representation of the stronger institutions from the West, but I do not see representation from the weaker academic institutions, especially those working with nutrition and health. So I hope that the next time we have such a meeting, this is my first time being here, we would have such a representation. Thank you.
Thank you. We've a question from the gentleman in blue.
Simon Chater from Green Inc. I'd just like, if I may, to make a couple of observations on communication and language, which has been a kind of sub-theme running through quite a lot of discussions over the past couple of days. And the closest it got to the surface, I think, was Christine O'Carley's tripping up, if you like, on a sort of conceptual blockage going back to perhaps to early career, a stumbling block caused by basic concepts that we learn in our early career and which then persist throughout our professional lives. And I think it's very healthy to examine those from time to time and get rid of, or at least very rigorously probe, those that you suspect may not be useful anymore. And I think it's particularly important at this point that the CG and its partners look at the kind of language we use, especially when we're on the brink, as we are at the moment, of what looks to me like the taking on of an important new agenda and the coming together of two research communities, agriculture and nutrition. We at Green Inc. Recently did a report for Coventry University about agroecology. And there's a table in that report that shows that the word agroecology has at least 6 different meanings. And the meaning that you have depends very much on what sort of subset you belong to in agriculture or environment. And I suspect that probably as the two communities come together, there are going to be similar stumbling blocks like that. So we need to be very clear what we mean by basic concepts. And so finally, take a step back as you talk to each other. Don't assume knowledge and be particularly careful about jargon and acronyms. I spent quite a lot of yesterday wondering what ENAs were. And it turns out they are essential nutrition actions. But even once I've decoded the jargon, I'm still not much further forward because I don't know what they are. And I'll bet there's quite a large proportion of agriculturalists in this room who actually don't know what those things are, what essential nutrition actions actually are. So take a step back from your specialized knowledge and make sure you speak clearly and succinctly. And having mentioned the word succinctly, I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we can take one more question. Gentleman there. If it's very quick, we can take 2. And then I'll throw it over to the panel.
It's a delight to see how quickly Frank and John, CGIAR is moving into nutrition and health with a link to agriculture. A footnote, however, on the policy research needs in that field. No country can do that without appropriate attention to legal and regulatory regimes. to run the food system. And remember how iodized salt came about through a campaign, Chinese-style campaign from UNICEF. But the next micronutrients, iron, etc., don't have that campaign. We don't have the regulatory framework other than around food safety. We don't have it for the goods, we have it for the bads, and the CGIAR could play a key role, for instance, in the whole plant breeding field, to push an appropriate regulatory agenda. You need to get the lawyers into the room.
Okay. If there's a one-liner question, you wanted to intervene? No. Yeah. I think that's all then. In terms of, is that all in terms of questions? I don't think we'll have another round because we need to finish at 1:45, and I would like to give the panel the opportunity to answer. So if it's a one-liner question, it's okay.
Yeah. I'm Ute Latzke. I'm working for Welthungerhilfe, a German NGO implementing projects. And my question is about another silo, since we have been talking about silos. How can we make sure that research is getting out of its silo and the very good information that we have been discussing here gets into practice? As an NGO, we are always lacking funding to complement our project work with research. And my question would be, how can we work more closely together with practitioners?
Okay.
So to implement these new
Very
approaches.
good. I think a lot of what we've heard has been more comments than questions. But if I'm not expecting everybody in the panel to intervene, but if somebody from the panel would like to address these, and then we can hand the floor over to Ken, who will pursue with his closing remarks. Ken, you wanted to address some of the points.
I just wanted to address the question about the national programs very quickly, because this is not a fora intended to cement partnerships with national programs. That would be later implementation phase. The purpose of this meeting is to bring together non-traditional communities for the CGIAR. The NARs are one of our traditional communities, and so we've gone out of our way to try to bring the health and nutrition community to meet with the more traditional CGIAR research, and then university and private sector, et cetera. So.
Okay, anybody else from the panel care to comment, or will we move directly on to Ken's closing remarks? Ken, I think the floor is yours.
Okay. Okay. First, I'd like to just ask to see how successful we have been in trying to bring together the communities we hope for. I'd like to see a show of hands of people that would characterize their perspective, their background as being mostly public health and nutrition and medical community. Can I see those of you that would classify yourself from that community? Okay. Yeah, and then from the more agricultural community. Could I see those hands? So we're still oversubscribed there, but we're making progress, and I want to thank all of you for hanging on this far. The first thing I want to say that's not on these slides is that has to do with this silo concept. And I think I want to warn against a silo that is the nutrition and agriculture subset of the agricultural research community. In the sense that there are other megatrends occurring in agriculture that must be addressed, and particularly the supply side, because the fact is that right now we're in what Jeff Sayer and colleagues have called the agricultural bomb. You've heard of the population bomb. Right now we're in an agricultural bomb, and if there isn't a solution to the supply side, that is adequate supply of the staple foods, the world risks very large expansion of agriculture at the expense of natural resources, and feedback to climate change, powerful feedback. The last thing you want to do is clear a hectare of rainforest if you're really concerned with biodiversity and climate change. And we've saw some beautiful data set that's coming out in a journal called Global Food Security by Anita Rejmi that showed the elasticities of demand for various types of commodities. And it clearly shows that the thing that falls rapidly, most rapidly as incomes rise, are your staple foods like rice, maize, wheat. And that the elasticities for other things, demand for other things increase. The diversity of diets, the higher value fruits and vegetables, the livestock. But the reverse of that is also true. That if people's incomes drop, the elasticity for going backwards on the diversity of diets is rapid. And we saw that when food prices spiked in the US during the 2008 period when we had these spikes, huge spikes in food prices, and people's diets simplified because they didn't have the purchasing power to purchase that diverse diet. So there's a real link here, and so my caution is, and I think Professor von Braun mentioned it, that there are some of us that believe that in an era when the overall budget for agriculture was quite stable or actually declining in real dollars, and there was a new agenda coming on, a new emphasis asking the agricultural research community to spend more time on the environment, which was indeed a very valid point. But in an environment where there was declining real dollars for ag research, it came at the expense of things. There were trade-offs. And it could be argued that we're still living through that period because the rate of gain in crop yields right now today for the major staple foods is not sufficient to meet demand without a massive expansion of agriculture. And so as we look to the nutrition and ag link, diversifying diets, we have to do it within the context and the nuance that we're also increasing food supply. Can't be either or. So with that call, and that's particularly important for our nutrition colleagues, so that I think most people in the CG understand that, but our nutrition colleagues, I think, that work with us need to help us also achieve these other goals. In other words, the nutrition context within this broader mandate of ensuring adequate supply as well. Okay, so now we want to end with some of the things that we as the ISPC have learned from our experience here. And I think first off, I want to say it's been a very successful conference. Last night when we were at the City Hall, the Bonn City Hall, there was a palpable buzz in the air of the conversation. There was just exciting to see people from different disciplines, probably haven't been interacting as strongly as they were able to here. And you could see that even after a long day of sitting down and sessions and so forth, you could see that there was still excitement at 8 o'clock at night last night. So that's progress. And I think that we have seen then progress since the Delhi conference in 2010 on the understanding of evidence and collecting that evidence on the link between agriculture and nutrition. There's a long way to go. But that's good science, and that's the kind of thing that the CGIAR is very interested in. And I think one of the roles that the CGIAR can play is to help harmonize data that's being taken. We've heard of a number of major efforts because there is now a significant amount of new money coming in. And there's the danger when that happens that there's 1,000 flowers bloom, but they're all different colors, different sizes. So this idea that there's an opportunity here to make sure that data sets are harmonized, standardized, so that meta-analyses of the future are even stronger and more powerful. And so, second message, the importance of understanding how agriculture links to nutrition. And we've heard that a number of times throughout this meeting. And then it's been thought that some of the qualitative measures and monitoring them can help us answer some of those questions. Recognition, of course, this is a boilerplate, but recognition of the need for multisectoral working, particularly for interactions with the nutrition sector. Over and over again, the need to mainstream gender research throughout any kind of new efforts on nutrition and agriculture. More work needed to think through how to evaluate nutrition and health outcomes. You know, the fact that stunting is affected by many other things than just diversity of diet doesn't decrease the value of working to diversify diets. It just means there are other things that need to get done as well. And I think it's interesting to note the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation experience, where they were very successful initially in investing in the health and human health area. And for, I don't know, for the first 10 years maybe, they focused on that area. They weren't working in agriculture. But as they started to be so successful in dealing with some of the main health issues in sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, malaria, for one, they immediately realized that the food security issue and nutrition was becoming very important. And then unless they had progress there as well, the gains that they were getting on the disease prevention side could be lost. And so they then invested in the agricultural side as well. So, and you heard John mention the need to take care of and account for, and I would add here, both the positive and the negative impacts of agriculture on nutrition. There are certainly some negative ones. There are also positive ones, and we need to understand them as well. So next steps. Well, you all have your pen drive, right? And these have all of the presentations, okay? And there are a wealth of information, obviously. I'm going to refer to many of the presentations here. There'll be summaries of each session. And when we say published, that's a bit of a euphemism. We will publish it as an ISPC report. We've done that from the other science fora. They're not in a refereed journal, but they're on our website. And they are used. They're used by donors particularly. For instance, the last report on our Science Fora 2011 on the nexus between agriculture and the environment, we were asked, our ISPC was asked to present it to the European donor groups. It's been used by USAID and others as input to their thinking about how to fund research on the agriculture natural resource nexus. I would anticipate that this report would also feed into some of the donors' thinking on funding of research on agriculture and nutrition. We're going to follow up with a smaller, much smaller focused workshop that tries to bring together some of the ideas that have come forth here at this meeting, and then try to bring from that a set of papers that would be published in a very influential journal. And of course, all of this seeks to cement, hopefully, that this conference has provided an opportunity for you here to interact with people that you may not have had opportunities before, and that there have been new collaborations initiated here that would lead to impact at a later time. It's going to be hard for us to track that and monitor that, but certainly that's our hope. We're doing an evaluation of this event, and we're going to, I hope all of you are participating in that. We've had people, I guess, we have a form, questionnaire, and is that available here, or is that online, or how are we doing that? It will be sent out tomorrow morning, and please, I know the last thing busy people need is one more questionnaire, but please, if you will, give us feedback. Help us make this better. By the way, next Science Fora 2017 will be on the linkage between agriculture and poverty. There's 4 strategic level objectives in the CGIAR. The food security side, which is the supply, the poverty side, the nutrition side, and the environment side. We've done the nutrition here. We did the nexus with environment at the last one. The next Science Forum, we plan to focus on the links between investment in agricultural research, agricultural targets, and alleviation of poverty. And of course, you can all see that that's clearly linked again to nutrition. Well, in closing, again, I think we in the ISPC have been very pleased with the event. Very happy that all of you have decided to spend your time with us. We want to thank BMZ for funding and GIZ, particularly Wolfgang and Marlene, Judith, and Sandra for their support. We couldn't have done it without you. And can we show our appreciation? When we first broached the idea of a science forum on the linkage of agriculture and nutrition, we were just so pleased because Marlene and BMZ was immediately said that they'd be very interested in co-hosting with us, and it's proved to be a very successful collaboration. We want to thank the student reporters and student assistants. Would you stand up, those of you that are still here? Student reporters and student assistants. You have really made this science forum much better than it would have been otherwise, and I just want to thank all of you because having younger people involved makes a conference like this so much more valuable. And speakers for their time and effort I mentioned. I must say I was involved yesterday with 2 of the breakout sessions, and the preparation and the work of the chairs of those breakouts that I was involved in was fantastic. And it takes work to do that. Again, busy people taking time to help organize and run a breakout session. So I want to thank them. And what was wonderful, because we don't have a large budget for these Art Science Forum. The goal is not to have a big, ostentatious event. And so we purposely have a venue that is somewhat austere, perfectly comfortable, but we also had speakers who we were very lucky decided to come here with their own funds, so it really reduces the size of the overall budget that we need. And for those speakers who were willing to do that, we thank you very much. And then finally, of course, the City of Bonn and the museum, because those were 2 wonderful nights that we'll all remember, I think. And last slide. We want to thank those that were involved with putting this together. There was a steering committee. John, I want to thank you from the very beginning. John has been involved. Alan Dangor. Alan, are you here? He's gone. But as all of you who have been involved with putting a meeting together like this, it takes considerable work. So we want to thank all of you, steering committee, for helping us. I've mentioned breakout session coordinators, all speakers, session chairs, and then, of course, ISP Secretariat and council members. So with that, I'd like to close this meeting, and I'm going to be really looking forward to major advances in our work globally, but particularly in the CGIAR, on the link on fostering improved nutrition and health through a focus on agricultural research and within the CGIAR. So thank you very much. Thank you.